Today is Tuesday, September 6th, and we're taking things one day at a time here on the Outside the Oval podcast, the newest running experience on the internet. And on today's Outside the Oval, I will be joined by Jack Antsey of the Under Armour Dark Sky distance running team, and he will join me to break down his career at Illinois State, training in Flagstaff, and what it is like to run professionally. I had a great time getting to know Jack, and I think you guys will really enjoy everything he has to say. So please stick around for his interview later in the show. But for now, we have a lot to discuss following an exciting first week of cross-country action across the country. Not only did I make my own season debut, but almost everyone across the country did as well. There weren't a whole lot of surprises, nothing that threw off the page or jumped off the page, but there were definitely some things that were worth talking about today, and for both the men and women. And I'm not going to keep you waiting. We're going to jump right into it as always. And before we dig into today's running roundup, we'll be starting by talking about my own season debut, which happened to take place at our home Kennesaw State opener under the lights. We had a 6K dual meet against Clemson. We had a high school JV meet just beforehand, and then after we capped it off with a varsity meet under the lights. It was really such a great atmosphere, pretty solid course. It was a little muddy now and a little rough considering all the rain we've gotten recently, but it was very surprisingly flat, very fun, and like I mentioned, such a great atmosphere for racing. I would really love to see this meet blow up one day because I really believe the people who put it on, the people who compete in it, and I feel like they just really deserve a really nice meet. And with that being said, it has everything you need in order for a meet to blow up. It has the parking, it has the course. It's a perfect spot for it, and I appreciate those people at the Noonday Creek Park for hosting it. On an individual standpoint, wasn't really was what I was looking for. Truly believe that I was the best runner on the course, but coming off an injury, I think I did pretty well. I'm really excited to get out there this week and continue getting more fit. We have mile repeats tomorrow, so Tuesday, and then on Friday we got another workout, a classic workout of ours. Looking forward to it, and then 2 more long runs before the next meet. So there's plenty of time to get back into shape after this 2-week not sabbatical but injury almost, and really looking forward to getting the gears moving because that's really what my problem was this past week. No gears during the race. We went through 1K. I heard 3:07 just before I got there, so I'm guessing about 3:08 to 3:11, somewhere in that ballpark, and ended up running 18:50 8K, or 6K, excuse me. So there was clearly some time at that first K I could chop off, but I know once I get into a meet like North Alabama, where I'm forced to go fast, that will not be the problem, and I'll just be able to click off low threes almost the entire race. Really looking forward to get to this 2-week training block in between races, as I think it will prove to be really influential for this upcoming October, where I really think things will get going. So although this was not the race I was looking for or the team, it was a great start, good building block, and it gets me excited for what's ahead. And I think we're going to have a very good October and November cross-country season. I'm ready to rock and roll. But that's enough of me. Let's jump right into it today. We'll start with the women, and on today's first edition of the Running Roundup, which is the segment that we will name when every week we're going to come on here, talk about what's happening around the NCAA. And I'm excited to bring you guys this week's Running Roundup and run through a few notable results. And first, we'll kick things off on the women's side. In Portland, the Oregon women dominated the Lewis and Clark opener, scoring just 15 points in a field that included nationally ranked Oregon State. Now, this was neither their A teams, but it does show the depth of this Oregon Duck team, which I do believe will be a threat down the road. So pay attention to the Oregon Ducks as this season progresses. Dana Fahan, she looked very strong in her season debut at the Missouri cross-country opener. She led Iowa State to a 17-point score, knocking off Oklahoma and Missouri. She would end up going on to win the meet, running a 17:24 5K with her teammate Madeline Hill finishing just behind her in second. Dana Fahan, I ended up declaring her this year's sleeper pick heading into the season. The Outside the Oval Sleeper Award was given to her and Yassine Abdallah from Tennessee on our Instagram page and will be later uploaded to our Twitter. So catch that and give them support. Really looking forward to seeing what Fahan can do coming off a very strong track season and what looks to be a very promising cross-country season on the horizon. Across the country now, and Arkansas ended up running scored 15 points in Taylor Ewert's season debut. In the 3K race, Ewert clocked a 10:38 at the Griner Family Cross Country Course in Stillwater. Arkansas, they ended up scoring 41 points while missing a few pieces. Texas A&M, they finished second, scoring 56, while SMU, Oklahoma State, and Tulsa all finished just behind them. And I think one of the other performances I'd like to highlight is Grace Plains from Texas A&M. She had a solid opener, and this is her finishing just behind Ewert, coming in second place, and she's had a phenomenal track season. Really looking forward to seeing what this cross country turns into. And I really do believe she'll be in the mix for a spot at Nationals this fall in the South Central Regional. And earlier this week, the USTFCCA National Coaches Poll released their rankings, and that saw Arkansas ranked 9th, trailing just behind Oklahoma State, who's ranked 4th. So this meet ended up seeing 2 top 10 squads dueling it out. Of course, neither of these teams ran their full squads, but it does give us a little preview as to how strong these teams are up and down the roster. So we're not just looking at their 1, 2, 3, 1 through 4 anymore. Their entire programs look pretty strong. Should be interesting to see what happens as the season goes on. But if we take a look at those rankings a little bit more closely, to no one's surprise, NC State received 9 of the 11 first place votes, narrowly edging out New Mexico State for that top spot. Colorado would end up rounding out the top 3, while Stanford finished 5th, receiving that final last place vote. And I think these rankings were very interesting, to say the very least. There was a lot of turnover on the girls' side of the NCAA this year, and I found it a lot more difficult to rank them than the men, which is really why I'm not too surprised to see so much parity across the poll for these coaches. 2 things that really struck out to me on these rankings, though. The first was Michigan's 10th place ranking following a 22nd place finish at Nationals. But they clearly showed why they deserved that ranking this weekend at the Michigan Open. They put 6 of their Wolverines inside the 18-minute 5K barrier, which included the winner of the race, Kayla Windham-Muller, and Erica Vanderlinde, who finished second, and they both ended up running under 17:10 during that race. Aside from Michigan, I found Alabama's 12th place ranking and Ole Miss's 16th place ranking pretty interesting. I loved the Crimson Tide in 2022. They finished 15th at the national meet last year, and they returned 4 of the top 5 from last year, including Mercy Chilangat, who's the overwhelming favorite to win the individual championship, in my opinion. I really believe she's the woman to beat, and when you have that number 1 runner, it makes your team so much more lethal. Really like where Alabama sits, but not only for that reason. I really like how dangerous this team is, but that depends on the return of Amaris Tenisma, who finished 3rd at the 2022-2021 COVID Cross Country National Championships. Now, she's dealt with her fair share of injuries over her career, but she still bounced back in a terrific way this past track season. She finished 17th in the 5K on the outdoor track in the National Championship meet. And this is really a team that would receive a significant boost from her return. And they could really make a potent team, potent top 5, and make a run for that top 5 finish in Stillwater with her on that team. So the Alabama Crimson Tide, they are a team I'm watching, and believe me, by October, they will be a frequent member of that top 10. But behind them, Ole Miss was only ranked 16th. And 1 year ago, this team finished 10th at the NCAA National Championships. And although they lost 2 top 5 runners and their head coach, I still don't believe it warranted this steep of a drop. And maybe I'm wrong. Very, very real possibility here. But there's really, really no one capable of stepping up like their top 2. We saw the adversity they had to face, losing their head coach entering this season. They've had a great training block, and they look strong all summer. But not only that, but Centeyu, Visa, and Ryan Helmers, who are also their top 2 from a year ago, are back and even quicker than last season. And considering all the top women distance runners that have already graduated since last season, there's room for these 2 girls to move up and put less pressure on their 3 through 5 runners, who, again, I believe are very capable of contributing to a top 10 finish at Stillwater this fall. So this Ole Miss squad is one I'm looking at and expect will surpass a lot of people's expectations this season. But let's shift gears a little bit If we look at the men's side, I would say there was even less significant races that happened this week, but there were a few results that I believe are worth mentioning. Once again, we take a look at the Missouri Cross Country Opener. This time, Ezekiel Rope from Iowa State ran away with the victory. He ran a 17:54 6K. He led the Cyclones to a 19-point score and a 37-point victory over Oklahoma, Missouri, and St. Louis. Rope's run was the most impressive performance of the week for me. Tried to pick him up in fantasy cross country, but he ended up having the same name as someone who's already taken the Tifers. So a gray area in that aspect. But with that being said, I think this was very impressive by Rope. For starters, Gaines Creek is not known to be one of the quickest courses, but he was still able to go under 18 and win by 11 seconds, instilling confidence to a Cyclones team without much of identity until this weekend. With Gabe Spierda and Chad Johnston quickly trailing Rope, this Iowa State team has really cemented themselves as one of the more dangerous teams in the Big 12 moving forward, which is honestly not something we should find too surprising considering the level of prestige this program returns year in and year out. Really liking where this Cyclone team is going, and I think they have a lot on the horizon for them. And of course, we cannot fail to mention the George Kite Classic at Buffalo Park in Flagstaff, hosted by Northern Arizona. The Lumberjacks looked dominant again, silencing anyone who might have picked them to finish anywhere but first in Stillwater this fall, and that's myself included. Drew Bosley and Nico Young were smooth. They looked amazing wearing the flats. And Bosley, my guy in fantasy cross country, narrowly edged out Young by 2 seconds for the win. Ryan Raff, Brody Hasty, and Theo Quay ended up rounding out the top 5 for NAU. And although they went up against hardly any competition, I think it's safe to say this team is going to be ready to roll in October and November. And as of September 6th, I believe it is now safe to say this team will be in the mix for a championship this fall. And anyone, including myself, who had their doubts heading into the season, after seeing how much depth they had, it's gone out the window. This team's ready to compete. I loved seeing how well Ryan Raff has run this offseason and during this race. So I'm expecting NAU to be up there with Stanford and Oklahoma State in the mix for that championship, like I mentioned. NAU ended up picking up 8 first-place votes. There wasn't enough doubt in the mind of the voters, as they were ranked first overall in the preseason coaches poll last week. And they were slotted just ahead of Oklahoma State, who received a single first-place vote, in second, and Stanford, who received 2 first-place votes, but they finished third. So the coaches seem to be high on these few teams this year. With that being said, there's a few others I thought they were pretty high on, and I felt like it was worth mentioning today. Washington ended up being 8th place ranking. And they probably earned it following last year's 13th place finish at Nationals. And they really returned a lot in 2022, which includes the NCAA 1500-meter national champion, Joe Wascom. And not only that, they returned Brian Fay, Nathan Green, and Luke Hauser. They're all back, and this team is ready to roll in 2022. But that's not where we stop. This team, they're adding Ed Trippus, an All-American from Princeton as well. But let's not stop there. Former high school standout Leo DeBosch, he also returns following an injury last track season. And I feel like those 2 runners really complete this formidable Huskies lineup that really did not, I guess, rank properly in my preseason rankings. I believe I felt like they were about 11 to a 13 team, but this team is a top 7 team, and they're capable of going top 5 when it's all said and done in Stillwater. Really like what Coach Andy Powell has going for him entering 2022. Expect big things from the Huskies. Gonzaga, Villanova, and Furman were the other 3 teams that received rankings that really jumped off the page to me. But again, these are teams that are more than deserving of these rankings. Gonzaga debuted at 16 following their 26th place finish at Nationals in 2021. But they returned their core of James Mwaru and Will Smith along with their strong recruiting classes to give them this team that boost they really need to make that next step into a 15th through 20th finishing team at the national meet. Villanova, they actually missed the national meet, unlike people have rumored Gonzaga might have last year. But they ended up making their debut 18th on this season's preseason poll. Halftooth Trenzos, he returns this year and is the 4th highest finisher from last year's national championship meet, which really gives the squad a really good number 1 to lead them to Stillwater. And I really do think that Villanova will be there in November. Lastly, Furman, they ended up landing at number 20 on the coaches poll, and they'll seek a better performance at the national meet in 2022 following their last place, 31st place finish last year. Cameron Ponder and Dylan Schubert, though, they returned at the top of this roster, and they'll really provide that incredible veteran leadership that's worked so well for Furman over all these years. And I would not be surprised to see Furman return to the middle of the pack at nationals this year, and I really do believe that this team will be ready to roll and rebound from the 31st place finish. But that's all I have for you on this week's Running Roundup. Please stick around because coming up next, Under Armour's Jack Antsey, he will join me on the show and we'll be right back. Joining us today on Outside the Oval is professional runner from Under Armour, Jack Antsey. Antsey has represented Team Australia at the Indoor World Championships. Jack, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And before we hop right in, you did get a chance to run, now that you're getting the chance to run for Under Armour. Before that, you got to represent Team Australia. But in the early days, you got to run for Illinois State, got to meet some of my friends from Ohio. So I would like to jump right in. In fact, what was your running career like before you signed to Illinois State and before you made it to the United States?
It was, Illinois State was some of the best years of my life, that's for sure. I look back on it really fondly and, definitely one of my better decisions to end up at Illinois State. But, before that, I was in Australia. I grew up all my childhood in Australia, and running was certainly not something that I did all through my childhood. I picked it up pretty late. I was probably about 16 when I started running, and I was probably only like 17 going on 18 when I decided to actually take it seriously and see how far I could go. And I guess with that limited experience, that was kind of the part of my decision to go to ISU. Is I didn't have that much experience, and I didn't really want to come over here and go to a massive program where I was kind of going to be thrown in the deep end straight away, and it was going to be sink or swim. And so I felt like ISU was like a really good bridge to where it was a strong enough program, but it was gonna be a good foundation for me to kind of develop over the years, and I felt like it was a good bridge. So, yeah. For sure, yeah. Illinois State's a great program. And as a Redbird, you had a pretty solid career. You racked up several Missouri Valley Conference championships. You finished 7th at the 2019 NCAA Outdoor Track National Championships in the 1500. So what was your career like at Illinois State? Could you share some running highlights, favorite memories from your time in Normal, Illinois? Yeah, I think the first year or so was like a huge transition. Like I said, I'd only been running for a few years before that in Australia, and I'd had a little bit of success in Australia, a couple of national medals and some state championships and stuff like that. But making that transition to, moving to a completely new country and being in the NCAA and all of that is, as I'm sure you can understand, a pretty huge transition. And so I feel like the first year was just such like a huge learning curve. And my overriding memory from my first year especially was just how I remember coming in. I came in the spring semester, and I remember being sick that spring semester, probably half of the semester, just because in Australia in December, it's the middle of summer. It's 90 degrees plus where I lived. And then I came to Illinois State in the Midwest in January of 2017, and it was freezing cold. I'd never seen snow before. I'd never seen anything like that. And so I just couldn't stay healthy. I was getting strep throat and just colds and flus every 2 weeks. And it was just all these things that I didn't really consider when I was preparing to come to the US that just kept popping up and stuff like that. And that was a pretty humbling experience my first year in the US, but I fell in love with it straight away. Was lucky to have a good coaching staff at ISU, and I think more importantly, I met some really amazing people on the team at ISU, and I think that was kind of the biggest thing for me. I think like to be running well, I need to have a good group of people around me that is going to keep me accountable, but also allow me to have some fun and enjoy my time. And that was exactly what I found at ISU. Just a great group of friends, and that was kind of my early memories of ISU. And then after I kind of got used to those early struggles and just like living overseas and getting used to school and stuff like that, things started to come a little easier, and I had a little bit more success sort of my sophomore, junior year. And started to win some conference titles, broke 4 minutes in the mile, All-American, like everything just kind of started to fall into place after that first difficult year. And like I said, ISU was great. I loved my experience there, and would recommend it to anyone looking to go to a mid-major or anything like that.
For sure. And as a former Ohioan, welcome to the Midwest. That's what it's all about in January, running in the snow or the slush.
Straight from the deep end, that's for sure.
Absolutely, especially in Illinois.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, you had a very successful college career and came out of college, and you ended up signing with Under Armour's Dark Sky distance team in December, so not long after the conclusion of your May track season. And you've been training in Flagstaff ever since. So I'm curious, what went into that decision to turn professional, and why did you choose Under Armour?
Yeah, it was I'd always wanted to turn professional. That was always the goal in college. I always, after I started to have a little bit of success, I always kind of viewed that as a possibility. I don't know what it is, but ever since I came to the US, you know what it's like. You see so many videos of NAU and Flagstaff and professionals coming up here to flag and training and stuff like that. And I always just had a thing for flag. I don't know what it was. I just kind of I just knew that it was a great, probably flag and boulder are the two spots in the US where everyone seems to gravitate towards. And I just loved flag and what it had to offer. And I think also with wanting to move up to flag, I think I was just at a point in my career where I needed something different. I needed a new stimulus, and I needed I feel like I'd been consistent for a few years, but I just needed something new and something exciting. And I was curious about altitude and how that would benefit me. To be honest, before I'd made we can get to my decision to join Under Armour and everything, but when it came to the time where I was okay, I'm going to go live at altitude and see if that works for me, I was pretty apprehensive. I think it was one of those things for me where this was my last kind of chance of having a crack at being a professional athlete and seeing how good I could be, see if I could make world championships, Olympics, all that kind of thing. And I thought altitude is really going to benefit me or it's going to be terrible for me. There was no middle ground the way I saw it anyway. And I think that's the way it goes for a lot of people. It either works or it doesn't. And there's you thrive or you don't. And I think I was just willing to take that risk. I was okay, let's just throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. I'm grateful that, things have stuck more times this year than they haven't, which has been good. But that was my kind of primary decision for wanting to come up to flag. And then Under Armour as a group, I think I just, in my visit and stuff like that, and the conversations I'd had with Under Armour employees and stuff like that, it was pretty clear that they were starting to pour a lot of resources into their professional athletes, and especially on the innovation side of things with footwear and stuff like that, which is obviously a very hot topic in this day and age. You need to make sure what you're wearing is top of the line, and I really liked where they were going with a lot of that stuff. And it's been pretty crazy to see since I signed to now. It's been about a year. How far things have come on that side of things. Some of the spikes and flats that I've been wearing this year are, better than anything I've worn before. And I'm not just being paid to say that. I truly believe that. So, yeah, I think it was a good decision to join Under Armour. And then the other side of things as well was just like the team and the coaching staff. Stephen Haas, I think he does a great job of creating a good team environment up here for Dark Sky, and he knows so much about altitude. He's lived up here for so long and seen so many pros come up here and train that he's just so knowledgeable about altitude and the way to do it the right way. Especially for me, who's had no experience at altitude whatsoever. Like, he was such a great resource for me when I first moved up here. And then also Pat Casey, he retired last year and kind of joined the coaching staff at Dark Sky, and like, he's fantastic. I love having him around. He's it's nice to have someone around who is very recently been doing what we're doing. I think like sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect where like the coaches are a little far removed from like what it's like to be an athlete. And I think having Pat, who was literally like, running at a very high level only like last year, certainly helps, because I think he understands like, if we're having a tough day, he was doing that recently. So he's able to kind of, know how we're feeling and get on our level a little bit. And I think Stephen and Pat bounce really well off of one another. So it's been a good dynamic for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. Were there any other teams that you were in contact with or you reached out to?
Yeah. I talked to Atlanta Track Club a little bit. That was they were certainly on the list there for a while. And then, I pretty seriously considered, or not seriously considered, I pretty much decided to move back to Australia at one point before this opportunity opened up. There are a few groups back in Australia that I was looking at, but certainly happy with the decision that I landed on in the end.
Absolutely. And a fellow Atlantean, or whatever they call it nowadays, right now living in Kennesaw, Georgia, just 20 minutes outside of Atlanta. It would have been pretty cool to see you here in Atlanta. They're doing a great thing here, just like they are in Under Armour.
Yeah.
But when I did tell some of my friends I was having you on the show, they weren't too familiar with the Under Armour professional team, let alone that they train in Flagstaff.
Yeah.
And I've always been pretty familiar with the Under Armour team and a professional team. In fact, when you mentioned the shoes, that kind of hit home a little bit, because my dad likes running in the new Under Armour shoes. They've done a great job of kind of bringing in a new team of designers to kind of design the shoe. And everything's a lot of momentum for you guys right now. And despite being a lesser known team, they've always had a solid foundation, good coaching, and I believe they're on the brink of a breakthrough. And I think it shows through signings like you. So far, how has your experience as an Under Armour athlete been?
Yeah, I think it's been really good. Like, there was so many unknowns going into my first year. I think, it's just like I talked a little bit before about like the transition from coming to Australia and like how difficult that was to like settle in Illinois and stuff like that. But like, I almost feel like this transition was more difficult than that. Just because like, I feel like when you join a professional team, especially in flag where there are so many professionals, it's a bit of a sink or swim environment up here. Like I moved up here and all of a sudden was working out with like, people are coming up here for camps all the time, and you're working out with like Craig Engels, and you're working out with Neil Gawley, who just ran 3:32, and all these like incredible guys, Kobe Alexander, like all these guys. And I just never trained with people that were at such a high level before. That was quite intimidating in the beginning. But and I think the other thing too is like, you kind of want to hit the ground running and like prove your worth straight away. And so there was always a little bit of pressure to kind of get off to a good start, and you want to show the brand and everyone on the team that it was a good decision to sign you and stuff like that. So I felt a little bit of that pressure, but also just like all the new stuff. Like I'd been with my previous coach for 5 years. I was pretty settled on that kind of training regime, and I'd never been to altitude. I was running in new shoes. I was like completely different style of training. Like all of these things are so new that it was quite a difficult transition. But I was lucky enough to have, a pretty good start indoors, and just got off to it. Like, just had a couple. It wasn't like my first race of the season wasn't anything spectacular. I think I ran like a 3:58 or 3:59 mile, but it was just kind of enough to be like, okay, like this is working. I'm off, like I can do this. And then like ran the world standard for world indoors in Boston a couple of weeks later, and then a PB in the mile a couple of weeks after that, and like all of a sudden over the span of like 3 or 4 weeks, I kind of felt like, okay, like I'm doing this, like this is working. And then getting to go to world indoors was awesome. And then like coming back from that, putting together a pretty solid summer in the US was really exciting. And I think I'm racing more consistently than I've ever done before. I think I've always had a good performance in me, but I've always had like a pretty, like, it's always been like good performance, like terrible. And then like, so it's been nice this year to find some consistency, and hopefully that's something that I can continue.
For sure, and that's going to happen, just getting used to the training. But now you're training in Flagstaff permanently, and that's got to be a treat. You kind of hit on that earlier. It's kind of like this just unusual feeling around Flagstaff as a whole. Could you talk about your life so far in the running mecca of the United States?
Yeah. Like I said before, I feel like the two spots in the US are Boulder and Flag, and like coming from the Midwest, where like I was in my very small niche of like running friends and hanging out with them, but it's so different here because like everyone just lives and breathes it in Flag and Boulder as well, and so it's very different to like walk down the street and you see like you see Ed Cheserek like walking down, like getting a cup of coffee and stuff like that. Like it's just so different to what I'm used to, and so it's like a pretty cool spot to live and train because I think like as a professional, like the year is so long and like everyone's got their specific calendar that they're working towards, and so like people are always dropping in and out of town, but because so many people live here that like run professionally and run recreationally and stuff like that, like whenever you're here, like you can guarantee that like you can turn up to like Lake Mary Road and there'll be 20 cars there, and you can run with like 20 people, and like it'll be great. And so like I think that's been like the funnest thing, is just getting to know all the different people here that live in town, and whether it be pros or recreational runners or college athletes or whatever it may be. I feel like it's been fun to just like meet so many new people.
Yeah, and I always love getting to know my guests a little bit more than just the running self, so I really appreciate that answer. And I myself got the opportunity to be in Flagstaff for a little bit this summer. My family got to take a vacation there. It's beautiful, and I think it's incredibly unique that you get to be living there while you pursue your goals. I think it's a beautiful town, just great, beautiful atmosphere. So for the moment, we can take this away from running again. What have been some of your favorite things to do in Flagstaff while you've been a citizen of the city?
So I'm a big outdoorsy person, so I love I love going on hikes and stuff like that. Like there wasn't a ton of that to do in Illinois, or anything like that. So like I'm always looking for like Sedona's like 45 minutes away. You can go like on a beautiful hike down there, or like Phoenix is like a couple of hours away. You can go do a bunch of fun stuff in Phoenix. So it's like pretty close to a lot of stuff, and like I honestly love just like hanging out with the team. Like we've got this since I've been on break, mostly we've been playing like a lot of bowling and stuff like that. Like we live just down the road from a bowling alley, so we would just go to the bowling alley like 2 or 3 times a week and play like 4 or 5 games of bowling and just like do stuff like that, just silly stuff. But for me it's mostly just about like spending time with friends up here, and like I said, there's so many like cool people to hang out with. So like I'm pretty basic. I enjoy just going down to like a cafe, and Flagstaff has like so many like cool cafes and places to eat like that. So that's normally how I spend most of my time. But
Yeah, there's so many things to do down there. Like, I think you hit it perfectly. There's a lot of like places to eat, cafes. I think I went to some pizza place when I was down there, and I love that one.
Yeah.
Still probably my favorite pizza place I've ever found outside of Ohio.
What's your
But if we're
go-to from
diving
Ohio?
into your if we dive into your past season, you got to compete at the Indoor World Championships this March, and you got to run in the 1500. That's got to be super exciting. Could you talk about that experience and what it was like and what it meant to you?
Yeah, it meant a lot. I think, yeah, like growing up, like for me, like, and I'm the same for like you and probably every other runner. Like, you want to represent your country, like on the world stage, and yeah, never got the chance to do that beforehand, and so like this is a pretty special opportunity for me. Especially, I think when you live in the US and you spend so much time away from your family who are like living in Australia and stuff like that, to be able to like go and represent Australia and like represent them, that was a pretty special moment for me, and hopefully something I can do again here soon. But yeah, like the whole build up was very interesting. Basically, yes, I'd ran the standard to qualify, but we were pretty sure that I wasn't going to get selected based upon the fact that World Indoors is only 2 spots. And so Ollie Hoare and Stuart McSwain are ranked like top 5 in the world. And they had both ran the standard, and like when you're top 5 in the world, like obviously like you're in the medal hunt. So like we were pretty confident that they were going to get the 2 spots, and I was going to be like the 3rd guy to miss out, or like the 1st guy to miss out. And then, yeah, so like we kind of thought that I wasn't going to get selected. And then based off of that decision, I had decided to fly back to Australia to try and get ready for the national championships in Australia, which are pretty early. They're like March, April. So my plan was to go, spend probably 3 or 4 weeks in Australia before that national championship. And I had made the trip back to Australia, and literally as I fly into Australia, I get into Sydney airport, and I have like 4 missed calls, and I'm like, oh no, like what's going on? And yeah, it was Stephen, my agent coach. He was like, yeah, you're in. Like we need to, like you need to get back over here or get back to Serbia. Or he's like, I don't know what we're gonna do, but like you can't be in Australia. You need to be. And by this point, I should probably point out the championship was like 5 days away, 6 days away. So it was like very like time was of the essence. And so yeah, like I made for those people who don't know, like getting from the US to Australia is like a 24-hour haul. Like it's not like a very easy travel day at all. So yeah, I got back. Hadn't seen my family in like 2 years because of COVID. Like I'd been in the US for a very long time. So I'm like, yeah, hey guys, like this is great to see you and everything, but like I gotta go. So like that was a pretty interesting like 24 hours. But yeah, like got on the plane, went to Serbia pretty much like 2 days later, 3 days later, I don't know what it was. And yeah, like I think just like the all the like emotion that kind of went into like that week, and the travel and like seeing family and getting selected, and like I think like it was just so much that I picked up a little bit of a like travel bug, like a flu or something like that. I'm not sure what it was, but I picked up a little bit of sickness, and like I wasn't able to compete to the level that I wanted to compete at. But like it was just one of those things where, like I said, you dream about representing your country. So like when you get the opportunity, you're not going to let a little bit of sickness like come in between that. So it didn't matter how sick I was always going to turn up and give it my best. And it wasn't enough on the day, but hopefully, like I said, I'll get another chance very soon. So
For sure. And I don't blame you. If I were to get sick, I'd do the same thing. I'm going to trot out there and give it my all for my country. It's just I'm not going to sacrifice the opportunity. And you ended up having a very solid summer training block after that race. You got to run a few fast 1500s and mile races, including the Festival Miles, the Music City Carnival early in the season. And like the World Championships, what was it like being able to represent Under Armour, your professional team, in those competitive meets, and how did those races go?
Yeah, no, I think so after kind of World Indoors and Nationals in Australia, like I came back to America and back to Flag, and didn't really race for probably like 6 or 7 weeks. I just wanted to like get up here and just get like a really long kind of block in Flag, and just get some consistency back with the previous month being so like, just traveling like every second day and stuff like that. And so that was really good for me to come back up here and just like put my head down for 6 or 7 weeks and get fit. And then, like you said, Festival Miles and Music City was kind of like my outdoor season openers. And I think, that was like really confidence building that I was able to, I think it was Festival Miles was Thursday night, and I was second place there in like 3:56, I think, for the mile. And then backed up on Saturday, like 2 days later, to run. I think I was fourth at Music City in like 3:38, which was just like after being up in Flag for so long, to like have a couple of good races to get the season started was like really really important. I think I'm really big on momentum. Like if I can like get some momentum early in the season, like that's half the battle for me. Like if the first couple of races go poorly and like I feel like I'm soul searching for a bit of confidence, like that's when things start to kind of go on like a downward spiral. I almost think like those couple of races were like the thing that set up the summer really well, because I kind of felt like things are going well. It wasn't like they weren't PBs or anything, but it was enough to kind of start to believe that like, okay, I can take a swing here in the next couple of weeks and like try and run something really quick, which is exactly what happened. I PB'd like I think 3 or 4 weeks later, ran 3:36 in LA, and then I think a month after that PB'd in the mile 3:55 in Philadelphia. So like I said, I'm just big on momentum. You get a good start, and it's a lot easier to keep things rolling in the right direction.
Yeah, so after this big summer block train, you had several other races that you just talked about. But now that we have kind of open fall season, winter coming up, what else is on your horizon, or what are some other things you're really looking forward to do? Any goals for the next calendar year?
Yeah, I think. I don't think I'll race much for the rest of the year. I think last year I really benefited from just similar to what I just talked about coming up and having like 6 or 7 really good weeks in Flag and not racing and just putting your head down and training. I think similar to that, last fall I kind of did the same thing, and it set me up really well for indoor, just like for 2 months straight, just not racing, just like, good solid work up here. I think that's kind of the direction we'll probably try and head again, is just like for the rest of the year, just like slowly get back into things. And then once we do start to ramp things up, just not really worry about racing in like November, December, October, and just kind of try and lay the foundation for a big 2023. It's a long year next year. Like World Championships aren't until like now, or like, I think the end of August. And so like, that's a long time to be competing at your best for. So I think if I'm trying to get on that team and compete in Budapest, like it makes sense for this next couple of months to just be like getting back into things, make sure I'm healthy, make sure I'm doing all the right things, and hopefully that'll set me up to have like a really long year next year. So
absolutely. Yeah, we seem to be on the same page when it comes to training. These long training blocks, kind of focusing on building blocks. Every workout matters. Every easy run matters. Taking things one day at a time. And I say that at the beginning of every podcast. We take things one day at a time here. And I love that. That's what you're doing over there in Flag.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I just feel like I'm someone who needs, and maybe this is just me being insecure a little bit, but I'm someone who needs like a really long build up to be like, I'm not someone who's like talented enough to train for 2 or 3 weeks and then come out and just hit one. Like I feel like I need that consistency over time to kind of be at my best.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's kind of what I like to have. I like to have a long summer, a long winter before we start racing to really jump into things. But Jack, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me. I appreciate Tyler reaching out to me and connecting the two of us. And then, yeah, and I really enjoyed having you on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, and as always, thank you all for listening. I will catch you guys all next time on Outside the Oval.